Welcome back. I'm Bhavna, founder of the Inspirited Life Co. If you have been following this series, you may have noticed that we have been exploring different aspects of self leadership, from awareness to emotional regulation to the patterns that quietly shape how we show up in our lives. And today, I want to bring all of that together. Because when we talk about growth, it is very easy to focus on what we should be doing differently without really understanding what actually helps us change. Have you ever felt like you were trying to grow, trying to shift something in your life, but somehow you keep finding yourself in the same patterns? Not because you are not putting in the effort, but because despite everything you are doing, something is not quite shifting. What if the issue is not your effort, but the tools you are using? We often believe that growth comes from doing more discipline, more motivation, more learning, more pushing ourselves to change. So we consume more content, we make plans, we promise ourselves that this time will be different. And yet, after some time, we find ourselves slipping back into the same habits, the same thoughts, the same reactions. It can feel frustrating and at times even confusing, because on the surface it looks like we are doing everything right. But growth is not just about effort, it is about using the right tools at the right time. And many of the tools that actually create change are not the ones we tend to focus on. Because whether you realize it or not, you are already using tools every day. Overthinking is a tool, avoidance is a tool, distraction is a tool. They are just not helping you move forward. So the real question is not whether you are using tools, it is whether you are using them intentionally. It usually begins with something very subtle. A moment where something feels slightly off, a reaction that feels stronger than it needed to be, a thought that keeps returning, even when you try to move past it. And it is where awareness begins. Not in big changes, but in small moments of noticing. When you start paying attention to how you respond, what triggers you, what patterns keep repeating, you begin to see yourself more clearly. And without that clarity, no tool will truly work. Because you cannot change what you have not seen yet. But awareness on its own is not enough. Because simply noticing something, that does not always mean you understand it. And this is where reflection becomes important. Taking a moment to pause, to sit with your thoughts, to ask yourself what is really going on here. And often, thinking about it in your head is not enough, because thoughts can stay scattered, unclear, unfinished. There are moments in my own journey where I realized that I could keep thinking in circles, or I could begin to process things more intentionally. And that is where writing things down changes something. It gives structure to your thoughts, it slows things down, it allows you to see patterns that you may have otherwise missed. This is also the intention behind the journals I have created. Not as something you have to fill perfectly, but as a space where you can begin to understand yourself a little more honestly, a little more clearly, even on days when you are not sure where to begin. Another tool that many of us rely on is learning. We read, we watch, we listen, we try to understand how to improve ourselves. And this can be incredibly valuable, but only when it leads to something deeper. Because learning without reflection often becomes noise. You may recognize ideas, you may agree with them, you may even feel motivated by them. But unless you pause and ask how this applies to your life, it rarely creates lasting change. Growth is not just about what you learn, it is about what you do with what you learn. There is also a tool that is often overlooked, and yet it quietly shapes you every single day. Your environment, the people you spend time with, the conversations you are part of, the content you consume. All of it influences how you think, how you feel, and how you see yourself. And most of the time, this happens without you even realizing it. Which is why becoming intentional about your environment can create shifts that feel almost effortless, simply because you are no longer constantly working against yourself. And then, there are moments where even after all of this, you may still feel stuck. You are aware, you are reflecting, you are trying to understand, but something still feels unclear. Not because you are not capable of figuring it out, but because sometimes we are simply too close to our own patterns to see them fully. And that is where the right conversation can make a real difference. A space where you are not just thinking things through on your own, but being guided to see what you might be missing. This is exactly why I offer the Clarity and Confidence Reset sessions. Not as a place where I give you answers, but as a space where you begin to see your own patterns more clearly, so you can move forward with more intention and less confusion. Different tools support different stages of growth. Some help you become aware, some help you process, and some help you move more forward when you feel stuck. Some people prefer to work through things in their own space, at their own pace, and tools like journaling can be incredibly powerful for that. And for others, especially when things feel more complex, having that guided space through a one-to-one conversation can bring clarity much faster. It is not about using every tool. It is about recognizing which one you need, where you are right now. If you feel like you need a space to start reflecting, I have linked my journals below. They are designed to gently support that process. And if you feel like you are at a point where you need clarity, not just content, you can explore the Clarity and Confidence Reset session as well. Both are there to support you depending on where you are in your journey. As we come to the end of this series, I want to leave you with something simple but important. Everything we have explored, from awareness to emotional regulation to habits to the tools that support your growth, none of it is about becoming someone completely different. It is about becoming more aware of who you already are and learning how to work with that rather than against it. Because real growth is not loud. It does not always look dramatic. It often begins quietly, in moments of honesty, in small shifts in awareness, in choices that feel almost insignificant at the time, but begin to change how you experience your life. If this series has given you something to think about, stay with it. Let it sit with you. Because awareness, when you stay with it, has a way of changing things in ways you do not immediately see. And this is not the end of the conversation. In what comes next, we are going to take this a step further and explore how to actually integrate all of this into the way you live, work, and lead yourself, especially in moments where it feels difficult to stay aligned. So if you have been reflecting, if you have been noticing, if something has been shifting for you even slightly, you will want to stay with what comes next. Until then, stay with the awareness you have gained here, because that is where real change begins. Please take good care of yourselves, be happy, and stay inspirited. Bye.